Hello, everyone. This is Rick with the Cybersecurity and IT Professional Podcast, where industry leaders share their insights. 6 questions-ish in 9 minutes because hackers never sleep. So let's get to it. Question number one, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Charles Griffith. I'm the CTO of MileZero, a company that builds logistic tech for retailers. But I started MileZero, which is a Valley-funded company, to build out kind of delivery services for all retailers. And we were acquired in 2019, and we now do this for a lot of big retailers, primarily in the US and Australia.
Okay. So question number two, what's the best thing about being a cyber and IT and logistics professional?
I think it starts with trust. You're responsible for the trust of the data that is flowing through your system. It really doesn't matter what type of solution you're building. In our case, as I mentioned, it's logistics tech. Many people think of that as being insecure based on the way that you kind of look at a transaction historically. If you look at a shipping label, anybody can see that. Anybody can get that critical data. And now as we're moving all of this forward with technology, that data becomes very important to protect and to reimagine in terms of your own privacy, because that data can be aggregated, can be looked at, can be used for malicious purposes. So I think the most exciting thing for me is really, staying ahead of that game, both in terms of thought process and not accepting status quo, and also in terms of building security into all of those solutions to protect information you don't necessarily think of as being critical by today's standards.
There's so much information that it could be critical. It's impressive. So let's add to that question number three. I hear from other leaders in the industry that the buzzword cybersecurity or security in general is a top concern. What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm old, so it's meant different things at different points. I think that cybersecurity has been there throughout my entire career, and it's a long one. And I really, if I break it down into three segments of what I've done, I started in games. It meant, how do you protect that IP from being broken and stolen, right? All of the kinds of things we've seen with media and intellectual property and making those products sold so that you can command the kind of margins that those products need to be built. As I started to move into other areas like payments, it became, very, very much a scripted kind of process for protecting data based on standards. And you had audits like PCI, and you had KISP and others that dictated those, but you had to still, again, I think that the message is think ahead. If you just accept those standards, you're not going to be secure enough. And I happen to have had one of the biggest payment gateways under my purview during 2000, and we saw, a lot of terrorism was funded based on lapses in security. And then as I moved forward into e-commerce, as I mentioned, it's a whole new game. We're really changing an existing industry, a shipping industry, and we're taking a lot of data and making it more accessible. We're taking trends and things that people buy that people want to keep confidential, and we're keeping all of that information secure. And so again, it's about how do you do that, and how do you start from the beginning, and you build a nimble platform or solution that can be extended as you go forward.
Question number four, Charles, what piece of insight do you want to share with other experts?
Well, I think there's really three things. Again, you get this theme of three with me, but I find it's easy for people to think in terms of threes. I think the first one is what I just said a few times. You can't go by today's standards. You really have to. This is like a game. You're outsmarting an opponent, and you have to think ahead and think of, what do I need to do, and what do I need to kind of think about and protect so that it won't be taken. And you have to think of it from a number of different perspectives and use cases for, how will that data be valuable? Not just today, but also tomorrow. I think the next thing is you have to be humble and you have to engage experts. Cybersecurity is becoming infinitely more complex. It's becoming heavily, it always has been, but it's becoming even more codified to be very mathematical. There's a whole science behind it, and you need scientists if you're going to build a product or solution that scales. And you can't be the expert of everything. So you have to find people that are, well versed, whether it's in standards and audits, or whether it's in the details of protecting that data. But I think you can't outsource it. You have to still stay involved. And I think that comes to the last point, which is really don't limit yourself. Don't limit your thinking. Don't limit your engagement, and stay on top of it. Focus on it like it's a problem. Even if you're not an expert, you can still ask the right questions, because all you have to do is think like a criminal. And I think all of us can do that at times. So
That's it. How can you play better defense?
Uh, I mean, I think it comes back to one thing you have as an advantage that they don't have. If you're building software, and I'm going to use that as the example since that's my expertise, is you have the ability to know exactly what's happening in that software. You know its critical holes, you know its limitations, but you also know that you can build in hooks to make it easier for you to, outrace them. So again, I think of this as a race. Any solution and any problem is time bound. And so if you can get to market with a product faster, you're going to be more successful. If you can secure a product for a longer period of time between releases, you can outrace them. And again, you have to imagine that hackers at this point, especially the well-funded ones, do have all of those tools. And so you have to run that as kind of ground zero. What are those tests? What are those things that you need to do to basically, understand what the entry point is? But a smart hacker is going to continue to evolve and dig deeper if you have information that's worth taking. And I think that is the last point. The last point is build your solution so that it captures what you need, not more than what you need. A lot of these online solutions have a tendency to think, I'll do this cool thing that requires this data, but it really doesn't, right? And what you're doing is you're taking away privacy. And you have to think from that perspective to say, I don't want to keep any data that I don't need.
It is definitely easier said than done, but I think that is the simplest way to look at it. And so I appreciate that. I think people try to find advanced solutions that are extremely intricate, but you just made it super simple. Take what you need, use what you need, but don't take more, and then get rid of the data, right? Don't give them a reason to go after it.
Yep, I think that payments taught me that, right? Once you go through endless audits, you realize you really don't want to keep that kind of, UCI, PPI data in your solution. What you're better off doing is finding ways to restrict that. Now, there are going to be scenarios where you're delivering, say, alcohol, where there's a requirement to be able to persist certain information that you just can't get around, and you're going to have to keep it. So you start to think about, how do I find a specific solution just for that data? In other words, it's very difficult to protect your entire system. It's like fortifying a castle with the same level of integrity. And so focus on what you need to protect and really put your resources into that. That's another way to attack that problem.
Perfect. And now for the final question. What is your favorite piece of retro technology that just makes you smile?
It's going to be the Internet Wayback Machine. I look at it all the time to kind of remind us and myself of, it's a moving target. I took a look at last night at Amazon in 1998, and it brought two things to the forefront. One is, how far we've come, and at the same time, how far we really haven't come in terms of shopping. But it's the coolest product. You can look at any given site at any particular point that they archived it, and it's just a fantastic tool. I recommend everyone look at it if you haven't. Just Google that.
I have wasted way too much time on that. So I appreciate that. That's amazing. All right, Charles, you did it. 6 questions-ish in 9 minutes. It was epic having you on. Make sure you check out more episodes and insights from the Cyber Pro podcast. My name is Rick. Stay awesome, my friends. Thank you again.
Thanks, Rick.